I'm Ann Edminster. I run a green building design consultancy called Design Avenues in Pacifica, California. That's the San Francisco Bay Area. And we do a lot of different things. We support lead projects through certification. We support other projects with Greenpoint rated, Living Building Challenge, any number of things. We also do work with local jurisdictions on green ordinances. Um, let's see, help investors with deciding about green building investments. I do a lot of teaching for the large utilities in California about green building, and I published a book last December on net zero energy homes, and so I'm doing a lot of outreach around that and trying to accelerate the rate of adoption of net zero energy design practices.
What are you currently obsessed with? What lights you up?
Ah, what am I obsessed with? Well, I guess net zero energy is right in there. I think that the carbon situation, climate change is really absolutely central to what we all need to be doing in green building right now, which is why I wrote the book on net zero energy homes and why I am trying to get out there in front of as many people as I can and talk about that because I think it's hugely important. And I think we have a lot of potential. It's like the Amory Lovins and the whole negawatt thing, right? It's an enormous, enormous well of untapped opportunities to reduce energy usage in homes. And so that's what I'm all about right now, getting people to do that.
And how excited are you about the new building code that comes online January in California? There's a big provision about net zero homes and net zero commercial buildings by 2020. Tell me your thoughts and feelings about that.
Well, I'm really excited about the fact that once again, California has really stepped out and shown some leadership with the so called big, bold initiatives and really looking to foster a movement towards net zero energy in both homes and non residential structures. I think, like so many things, there is a large chasm between legislation and smooth implementation. And so that's a great opportunity for those of us in this field to help people kind of leap over that chasm with practical applications. But yeah, it's great to live in California where there is so much leadership on this topic.
And how is this going to affect the rest of the country, the other 49? And what do you see playing out in the next few years in terms of adoption of much more stringent energy efficiency, pushing towards net zero policies?
Well, California, as I said, we tend to take a leadership position out here, and the rest of North America takes turns copying us and making fun of us for being the hippy dippy, Birkenstock guys and chicks that we are. But they do tend to follow eventually. So that also is a great opportunity. It also gives us uh, every reason to fall flat on our face, find out what's going to work and what's not going to work, and share that with the rest of the country and the continent and beyond. I do think it's really inevitable that we will start to see more stringent uh, legislation and policies on this at all levels of government. And I'm very ambivalent about this, though. I have long believed that as a culture, we need to be much more demanding in the mandates that we place on our society. I think we've been very cowardly in a lot of ways about what our leaders have been willing to legislate. So I'm really delighted. The flip side of that coin, though, is as I work with more projects where clients are mandated to adopt green building measures rather than coming to them voluntarily, working with those folks is not nearly as much fun. It's like when you have to go to the dentist because you need a root canal, you're really not very happy to be there and you're not that nice to the dentist. If you go to the dentist to have your teeth cleaned and whitened and make you look prettier, well, then you're happy to be there. So there's a real dichotomy between the folks we work with who want to be there and those who are there because they have to be there. So this is a real challenge for us to manage as an industry. I'm sure many of us have experienced this in the past. Wow, what a great field to work in because everybody loves what they're doing and they're excited and committed and What's not to feel good about? Well, all of a sudden we're in an environment where people are being mandated to adopt change, and change can be difficult and painful. So this is a struggle, and it's something I think it's going to be challenging for many of us to surmount this particular hurdle and carry our excitement and commitment and passion for it over into realms where people don't start out feeling that way.
Is there anything that needs to happen, or any innovations that you need to see either on the policy side or even on the building construction side that you'd like to see that would really help us move to this next level?
Interesting question. Innovations in policy. Well, interestingly enough, for many years, my colleagues at NRDC, where I worked for a long time, have called me periodically as this whole green building legislation thing has been building up to a climax and saying, so Ann, what do you think about this? What do you think? What should really happen? And I've been saying for years, really, what I'd love to see the state do is not get out there necessarily right away and say, thou shalt, but to get out there in front and provide the resources and the excitement. So I think this is where the policy arena is somewhat lags. We put a law in place, and then often belatedly we figure out how to support that, the adoption and implementation of that law. I would love to see the policy be out there in front with the tools and resources, because then we could take the edge off that pain of change. Changing an industry, it's the proverbial turning the Queen Mary. It's not easy, but if you get out there and you give people the tools and hold a hand out, much, much easier. In terms of other resources, tools, technologies, processes, um, there are certain concrete innovations that I think we will need to see in order to make the advances in energy reductions that we need to. We need to see better windows, we need better quality insulations, and in particular, we need to find much better methods for retrofitting existing homes. Insulation is the classic example. Retrofitting wall insulation is just not pretty, and it's not extremely effective. But we need to figure out how to do that. Even in this mild climate where we live in the San Francisco Bay Area, people tend to think, oh, insulation, it's really not that big a deal. We have our windows and doors open a lot. Well, yeah, many of us are fortunate enough that we can live with our windows and doors open when the weather's mild. But then winter comes and we remember, oh, yeah, well, it does get kind of cold here. And because it's damp, it feels colder than it is. And actually, we do care about insulation. We need to care about it a whole lot more because it's, at least in principle, one of the cheapest lines of defense in terms of bolstering our energy performance. But retrofitting is very challenging. So there are some things. We also need to see advances in low energy HVAC systems, because right now most HVAC systems are designed for much larger loads and larger structures. As we get smarter with our buildings and make them need less heating and cooling, we don't actually have equipment out there that does that terribly well. So lots of opportunity there too.
And there seems to be a bit of a divide. I don't know if it's a divide, but there seems to be a bit of a an opportunity, maybe is the better word, between historic preservation and energy retrofits. And in the past, occasionally they've come to blows with we couldn't renovate something as green as we want because it's contrary to the historic preservation angle. To me, I see them both as kind of an opportunity hand in hand. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on fixing our existing building infrastructure versus building new, buildings. Is it realistic to think that we could make most of our existing buildings net zero?
Getting existing homes to net zero is a very big nut to crack. I actually had a very interesting project recently where that was exactly the situation. The home was historic, it had many really lovely and lovable features, interior and exterior, that the owners were very passionate about keeping, and rightly so. And it was in a great neighborhood, an older neighborhood that is great. All the tree growth is wonderful, large, mature trees providing great shade. There's many, many reasons why we want to encourage people to stay in these homes and these types of neighborhoods, location efficient. So, what do you do about these existing homes? With this particular couple, they were very creative and very committed, and they were willing to make some interesting lifestyle shifts to get their own lifestyle, of which the home is part, to net zero. Not everybody's going to be able to do that, but it's part of the solution. And part of that was living in spending most of their time in a small portion of the home.
Interesting. What are you excited to see this year at West Coast Green?
It's 12 minutes and 8 seconds. I'm always excited to go to a new conference and see the folks that are part of my community and see what they've been up to, because it's always interesting and I always learn something. I just don't know what it's going to be yet.
What are you going to be talking about at the conference?
Well, the fun event that I'm involved with is called Beer and Banter, and not surprisingly, that's at happy hour on Friday, 4:30 to 6. And in that session, I'm going to be, excuse me, frog in my throat, with Alex Wilson, Bruce King, and Peter Yost. And we're going to be just being creative and answering any question anybody wants to throw at us. So it'll be a fun, see what you can learn from the audience, because whatever answer we give them, somebody's going to pop their hand up from the audience and do one better. So I love that.
Well, this is a good segue then. What question would you like to ask the audience, if you could, that they could potentially answer at your session?
That is a good one. What would I ask folks at my session at West Coast Green? How about, what is the biggest impediment to projects you're involved with targeting net zero energy? If we know what the impediments are, then we can start tackling them, getting rid of them.
Well, Ann, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today, and we look forward to seeing you at West Coast Green.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it too. And you will get rid of that frog, won't you?
Yes.
Very good. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, thanks, Ann. I'll see you in a couple weeks, and
Yep.
I look forward to seeing you in person.
Likewise.
Okay, talk to you
Take
soon.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.